Go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy to get 20% off your first month of cognitive behavioural therapy, with weekly sessions online with a therapist, in addition to worksheets, a journal, meditation and yoga videos, and unlimited messaging. There's strong evidence that CBT can help people who hoard, and accessing therapy online can be affordable and accessible. Find out more and get your discount at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy.
Normally, being a little extra can be a bit much, but when it comes to healthcare, it pays to be extra. And United Healthcare makes it easy with Health Protector Guard fixed indemnity insurance plans. Underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, they supplement your primary plan, helping you manage out-of-pocket costs without the usual requirements and restrictions like deductibles and enrollment periods. So when it comes to covering your medical bills, you can feel good about being a little extra. Visit uh1.com to find the Health Protector Guard plan for you.
Rebag, your premier destination for luxury resale. Elevate your style with our curated collection of bags, watches, and fine jewelry. At Rebag, quality is our priority. Each piece meticulously vetted and verified by experts, ensuring your investment is nothing short of perfection. Buy and sell finds from the world's top brands, including Hermès, Chanel, and Cartier. Access expertly crafted and hard-to-find pieces that redefine luxury. Your next investment awaits at Rebag. Get 10% off your first purchase with code REBAG10. That's 10% off the luxury you deserve. Don't miss out. Head to Rebag.com and enter code REBAG10 at checkout. That's REBAG10.
Hiring for your small business? If you're not looking for professionals on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. That's like looking for your car keys in a fish tank. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So start looking in the right place. With LinkedIn, you can hire professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/spoken today.
Welcome to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder podcast. I am drowning in stuff and trying to find a way out. Listen as I explore the issues and delve deep as somebody profoundly affected by hoarding disorder. Find out more, including links to subscribe to the podcast and all of my social media at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. Finally, I am not a doctor. I am just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. Hey, how are you? Today, I am talking about the pros and cons of selling your stuff when you are de-hoarding. It's something I have generally advised against on this podcast for good reason, and I will go into exactly why over the course of the episode. But it is also something that I've started tentatively doing a bit, and I will go into why as well, because it's all about having the balance of both sides and working out what's best for you, but also what's best for the stuff you may be trying to get rid of. So a number of times on this podcast have talked about how selling your stuff as opposed to throwing it out or donating it is not the best idea. And the reason I have argued that is, well, there's a couple of things. I think one of the key things is that it really slows you down, really considerably slows you down. When it's a choice between put this in the bin now, put this in the charity shop bag and take it to the charity shop tomorrow, or put it in a pile that will one day go up on eBay and 10 days later someone may or may not have bought it, and then within a few days I will post it or I will relist it, then you can see that the speed of getting rid of something can be quite different. There is a whole process with selling your stuff that there is not if you try and get rid of your things by giving them away, by donating them, by throwing them away, by recycling them. And when you are trying to dehoard, that kind of speed can be important. Another main reason I have advised against it is that we often use the potential of selling it, or the prospect of selling something, as an excuse to not throw it out or donate it or give it away or recycle it. If we really secretly aren't ready to get rid of something or want to hold on to it, it's easier to say, oh, I'm not putting this in the charity shop bag because I'm going to sell it, without actually selling it, without ever putting it on Facebook Marketplace or putting it on Craigslist or putting it on eBay or Vinted or Depop or all of the 8 million options that exist for selling your stuff. And I know this because I've done it many a time. And I know this because as hoarders, we do really want to hold on to our stuff a lot of the time. And so if we have a legitimate justification to not throw it out today, it's very, very tempting to use it. I can't throw that away. That someone will definitely want that. Someone will definitely want that. And the result is that things don't leave the house. The result is that things stay, tripping us up literally and figuratively, and we have a great excuse for it. We can pretend it's part of the plan when in reality it's kind of a delaying tactic, or it isn't, but the result is delays just because of the nature of selling this stuff. And so that's been my attitude, and especially because I used to sell stuff on, for me, my experience with it is mostly on eBay. So that's mostly what I'm talking about. But, you know, this could apply to any of the marketplaces. But I used to sell bits and pieces on eBay, and I would take the time to photograph the thing and write a nice description and choose a price and calculate the shipping and all of that. And then answer all the questions that came in, and then it might sell. And if it sold, I would then have the worst bit, which was finding appropriate packaging in this indoor landfill and queuing at the post office to post it. I hated both of those. I could never find the right padded envelope. I could never bear the post office queues. I don't know what it is about post office queues being so much worse than other queues, but I hated them. And so I would kind of have a spurt of selling bits and pieces on eBay, and then I would stop. But because I would have these occasional spurts, that would then give me this legitimate reason to hold on to things to sell. And so while I would still donate things, there was a whole kind of subsection of stuff that I would definitely sell one day. But mostly the post office queuing thing meant that I hadn't sold anything on eBay for a good 10 years, I think. And then a month or two ago, I upgraded my phone, and my previous phone was still okay. And my first thought, of course, was, oh, I better keep it as a spare. But then I thought, well, I've still got my previous, 2 phones ago, as a spare. So really, I should keep one of the previous phones as a spare, but not both. And I thought, surely I can tolerate a post office queue if it's for something that's worth the effort. like a phone that will sell, for more than 50p. So I figured of the 2 phones I could sell, it made more sense to sell the more recent one, so my previous phone, because I would get more money for that. And indeed I did. I got £400 for this phone, which was very exciting. And that led to my other discovery, which is that these days you can buy your postage online, which I knew. But what I didn't know is that when your postie does their rounds every morning, they can collect your prepaid parcel from your door. Now this, for me, was an absolute game changer. And so I didn't trust the process, but it worked very smoothly. And so I was all full of, I just got 400 quid and money's a bit tight at the moment, if I'm honest. And so that was very welcome. And I was spurred on, and I knew that I had a broken tablet from years ago that broke, and it would still charge, but it wouldn't turn on. I had never got rid of it because it was one of those things where I thought, I bet somebody could fix this, so I should probably sell it. But then I never did sell it, but I kept it because somebody could probably fix it. And it felt wasteful to either throw it away or get it recycled. But then I never sold it. But then, spurred on by the phone success, I thought, I'm going to sell that broken tablet because there are people who know how to fix this stuff. So they buy broken things cheap and then fix them and then sell them for more. So everybody wins. The person with the broken one gets some money. The person who fixes it gets a sense of achievement and also some more money. And somebody else gets a cheaper tablet. And so I listed the Android tablet and explained exactly what was broken about it, because people they know what they can and can't fix. So the more detail I gave, the more people would know whether that was in their wheelhouse or not. And so I listed the old tablet and was very clear what was wrong with it, and it sold for £60. And that was very much £60 that I would not have otherwise had. The phone was great, but I mainly justified it by saying, I will put the money from this old phone into what I paid for the new phone. Whereas the tablet was money for nothing. And again, the postie collected it and it went, and the buyer was very happy and I was very happy. And that was it then. I started listing all kinds of things, and some of it has sold and some of it has not. And I have been having an interesting learning experience throughout the whole thing. And so I'm going to go through the pros and cons of various aspects of selling your stuff, particularly selling your stuff online, but some of it certainly also applies to those, there are shops, aren't there, that will buy old clothes that they can resell and that kind of thing. I no longer clearly think it's a 100% terrible idea, but equally there are things I have learnt that have reinforced that it isn't suitable for every situation, it isn't suitable for every person, and it can still be being used as an excuse. So I'm going to start with the pros. One unexpected pro of selling your stuff when you're de-hoarding is that it can give you a bit of a reality check about whether how you value something is realistic, is reliable. Because we as hoarders tend to think that all of this stuff has value. And that's on top of, there's something called the endowment effect that I did a previous episode about, that I will link to in the show notes at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. But basically the endowment effect has been proven many times that as soon as a human being owns something, they immediately value it more highly than other people who don't own that thing value it. So that's a human thing. And then you add the added biases that hoarders have, and we can really think that our stuff is worth a lot. And occasionally we are right. And a lot of the time we are wrong. And just because we see potential and creativity in every bit of fluff we come across doesn't mean that it actually has objective value. And listing things for sale on eBay, on Facebook Marketplace, wherever your favourite platform is, can really show you that sometimes a top that you have kept for years because it's too good to donate, which is a whole other topic, but that's something that we haven't felt the ability to get rid of because it's just too valuable. It turns out nobody will pay 99 pence for. Or a book that we think must be worth money because it's old, or it must be worth money because you haven't seen it in the shops, it's quite hard to get hold of, or something like that. Actually, if nobody will pay £1.99 for it, never mind have a bidding war to give you hundreds of pounds. It is quite sobering in terms of making you question, am I overvaluing the things that surround me? And sometimes I have been. And while that's not necessarily a nice lesson to learn, it's a really valuable one for me as somebody who hoards and who, I know I have a different understanding of my stuff than somebody who doesn't hoard has of their stuff. I know that. I know that my thoughts and feelings around the worth of my stuff are not always rational. But this can be a really kind of almost undeniable proof that that is the case. And when you're faced with it and you allow yourself to sit with that knowledge that, sometimes it's quite sad. Like, I've kept this with a view to selling it for so long, and now nobody wants it. Nobody values it. Nobody values paying £1 for this. And that's not always an easy thing to sit with, but I think getting that kind of objective, rational valuation of nobody bidding on your stuff is, in the bigger picture, really useful for us as hoarders. Now, the next benefit of selling your stuff when you're de-hoarding is kind of an obvious one. You can make some money, which, these are difficult times. We're in a cost of living crisis. I don't know what the current recession situation is, but the economy isn't going great, is it? And it feels on one level like any amount of extra money coming in is better than no amount of extra money coming in. And that's not necessarily the case, which I will get onto a bit later. But it's obviously a benefit that extra money is coming in. This really will vary depending on what you are selling. If you've got a room full of not just electronics, but electronics that people see a point in buying broken and fixing and reselling, then, there could be something in that. If you've got genuine collectibles, not, I think this should be collectible, but actual collectibles, then obviously there will be more money potential for you than if you've got t-shirts and socks and tote bags. And even with the things that should get you more money, trends are so powerful. So, they say, don't they, that what something is worth is what someone will pay for it. And it could be that something 10 years ago could have got you £100 and now will get you 150, but in another 5 years will get you 20, because it all depends on what people actually want to buy. So there are no guarantees when you sell your stuff. But if you are in debt, if you are struggling with the bills, if things are a bit tough, obviously making a bit of money is a benefit. Another benefit is that you are extending the life cycle of your stuff. If you sell something rather than throwing it away, or rather even than recycling it, somebody else is getting some use out of that thing rather than it just going straight in the bin, into landfill, or into the recycling process. Reducing consumption is always the most important, but reusing is still superior to recycling, which is superior to just throwing something away. And so it's beneficial environmentally, but it's also good for the hoarder brain to know that something is going to be used. We really, really want that when we get rid of a lot of things, don't we? We want that item to be put to good use. And if somebody's paying money for it, they're more likely to do that. And that feels really positive. It feels more sustainable, and that's brilliant. But I have to say at this point that donating does exactly the same. And so donating your stuff to a charity shop or to an organisation that can use it directly has exactly the same effect. So don't use that as your main reason for selling stuff. Another benefit of selling your stuff when you're dehoarding is that it's quite a good motivator to be more effective. If you are in two minds about whether to get rid of something, the thought of getting some money for it might be able to just tip you over the edge to, okay, then I'll get rid of it if it will get me some money. It might just feel that bit easier to let something go if you're going to get some cash for it, basically. So selling your things can be great for those reasons, because you are getting a more objective valuation of your stuff. You're making a bit of money, and you are encouraging that stuff to be reused rather than disposed of. And also it can just nudge you if you're unsure about something, but you're quite keen to have some cash. It might be the little nudge you need to get rid of something as opposed to keeping it. But there are negatives as well. Do you want to be a dehoarding darling? You can be now at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling. If you love the podcast and want a bit extra, you can finally sign up to subscribe. Members will get an exclusive monthly post with an additional top tip, some podcast and music recommendations, and a personal update from me about how things are going. Find out the full details at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling.
Want flexibility? Take yoga. Want flexibility with your health insurance? Check out United Healthcare Insurance Plans. Underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, they offer flexible, budget-friendly medical, dental, and vision coverage that may be right for you. More at uh1.com.
Hey everyone, I'm Craig Robinson, co-host of the Ways to Win podcast, alongside my good friend John Calipari. I've been on the go recently. Phoenix, Kansas City, Chicago. If you're like me and have a home but aren't always at home, you have an Airbnb. Hosting your home or a spare room is a very practical side hustle. If you live in a big game town, you can Airbnb your place for fans to stay in. Your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.com/host.
The big one is the amount of effort and time it takes. It is such a many-layered process. Whereas putting something in the bin or putting something in the donation bag or the donation box has a couple of steps. There are many steps involved in selling, no matter what platform you're on, whether it's taking the photos, and of course we're hoarders, so we have to somehow take photos without getting the background in, or whether it's answering questions or calculating postage. It all takes time. And if you're selling stuff that may be more valuable, you might also have to do some research into what something might be worth or which keywords to use to help it to sell or all that kind of thing. It is not insignificant, even when you're just selling a handful of things. And of course, if you're even vaguely obsessive, you'll be checking the website every 20 minutes, which again, not an insignificant commitment. And it's important to be realistic about the time and effort it does take, because it's also not a task that's as easy to batch as donating or throwing away can be. You can do things like batch taking your photos, batch doing your listings, but if one thing sells this week and another thing is relisted and sells next week, and then you get questions periodically through the week, and then somebody pays immediately, so you get that parceled up and sent, but the next person pays a day late, so you've got to do all that again the next day. If you're the kind of person who responds better to doing a lot of the same task in one go, then donating or throwing away is a lot more straightforward than selling your stuff. There's also logistics to bear in mind. I am not good at logistics, and so being able to not lose the thing I'm selling between listing it and selling it, being able to find bubble envelopes of the right size and find the sticky tape and get the labels printed and all of that is not easy. And because I do batch listing the things, it tends to mean that I might have 3 or 4 things to post in one go, which is good for batching, but really overwhelming for me, who struggles with logistics, when I have those 4 things in front of me and I have a giant bag with all kinds of packaging nonsense in, and I've somehow got to match up the items with appropriate packaging and then send the right thing to the right person. If you too struggle with logistics, do bear that in mind. It is a factor when you're selling things online. And storage as well, because the very fact that you're not throwing it away today or donating it tomorrow, but instead you're keeping it for a week until it sells, or another week until it sells, or another week until it sells, you've got to have somewhere to keep it. And that, of course, equals clutter. It is no less clutter while you're waiting for it to sell than it was 3 weeks ago when it was just on the floor. And this is one of the core difficulties for hoarders and selling stuff, especially if we may be using selling to delay getting rid of something. The reality is that as long as those things are not sold, they are still in your home. And your goal when you are trying to fix your home is to get that stuff out, not keep it in. And that relates to the next kind of disadvantage of selling your stuff when you're dehoarding. And that is that while I mentioned as a benefit of doing this that it can be a motivator to get rid of things, it can also be the perfect motivator for delaying getting rid of things. It's a great excuse, whether it's, oh, I'll sell it one day, or even I'm putting it up for sale now, but I have literally recently discovered that eBay these days just relists automatically indefinitely from what I can tell. So whereas when I sold the odd thing 10 years ago, you had to make a conscious choice. Do I want to relist this? Or is it time to give up on trying to sell it? These days, it seems that it just reappears on your selling page if it doesn't sell. And so, whereas previously you had to take a positive action to relist something, now the positive action has to be removing the listing. And so it's just that bit easier to let the relist run and run and run. And there is another motivator to delay getting that thing out of your home, even if it is becoming abundantly clear that nobody's going to buy it off you. And I mentioned earlier that whether things sell or not is quite a blunt but effective way to show you, to demonstrate to you the real value of your things. That can also be quite hard to take for some people. If you have treasured something for a long time and nobody wants to buy it, that can feel quite demoralizing and it can feel quite difficult. And that's not a great place to be if, rather than, oh, this is a useful reality check, if instead it takes you to, my life's work has been a waste of time, or I think this is beautiful but nobody else appreciates it, the world is depressing, or I have been daft and I feel stupid because I thought this was worth something and it's not. And that, I haven't had that reaction, but I can really see how it could happen. And in those circumstances, despite what I said above, which I do maintain, I would say that just not everything has monetary value, and something can be very, very valuable to a person, even if nobody else would buy it. But that can be a difficult thing to face. Another disadvantage is just there's a lot of uncertainty. I find that when I list something for sale, I make a decision about how much to list it for with a sense of, if it sells for this, even if nobody bids higher, I will be happy to sell it for this amount. So if I feel like something is really, really worth £20 and I would be upset accepting any less, then I will list it for £20 and it will either sell at that or it won't, or indeed it may sell higher. And then once I've made that decision, I'm quite clear and I'm quite set and I'm happy with my decision. But then you'll get a message offering you less, or you've got to make a decision. If it doesn't sell, do you want to reduce your price? And that kind of uncertainty and that kind of, or something might sell and then the buyer doesn't pay and it's all been a waste of everybody's time. There's no guarantee that anything you list will sell, and there's no guarantee that even if it does sell, the person will pay. And if you put your starting price as lower than you really want, there's no guarantee it will be bid higher. Or, there's so many different kind of factors that can come into play. And so if you really like certainty and really like to know exactly where you are with things and not have to negotiate, not have to deal with flakiness, then it may not be a good move for you. And then the final real disadvantage is just that the time and energy you spend listing stuff for sale, photographing things, posting things, wrapping things, could possibly be spent more productively doing something else, de-hoarding more proactively, actually getting things out of the house rather than speculatively, potentially getting some money for them in a couple of weeks' time. It could be that in the 20 minutes you spend working out how much other people are selling this particular thing for and uploading the photos to your computer and then editing them, and then all of that stuff. Maybe you could have filled a rubbish bag with all kinds of things, and the thing that you were thinking about selling is happily in the charity shop bag, and you've got a lot done. And especially because, again, I know about eBay most, but the fees they take are not small. And so it might be that you think, I'll be happy if I get £10 for this. But then they take 10 and a bit % and then a set amount as well. So you may be dissatisfied anyway with what you get, and you may think, well, I kind of got some satisfaction from knowing that somebody else can love this thing, and I've got a little bit more in my bank than I had this morning. But given the time I invested in selling this thing, maybe I could have used that time and effort differently. And this is all stuff that you have to consider as part of a bigger picture. Some of that is your own personality. Would you find selling things motivating to get them out of your house, or would you use it as an excuse to just hold on to it for longer? Are you in an urgent situation where you need to de-hoard very, very quickly? If so, this is not the time to sell your stuff. This is the time to just get rid of it in whatever way you can. But also on the item itself, it might be that it's worth selling a perfectly good spare phone, but it's not worth selling a pair of shoes. And we have to make those judgments for ourselves, but informed. It can definitely be worth having some parameters in place if you are going to sell things. So one I would definitely say is have a minimum. If this thing is worth less than a certain amount of money, if I would be happy getting less than a certain amount of money, I won't sell it, I will donate it. And that number will be different for different people depending on your circumstances. But it might be that you say, it's not worth my time and energy if this won't sell for £20 or more. But what that number is will really vary. Maybe 100, maybe 5. You need to make that calculation for yourself in the context of all those other things. And other parameters you might put in place are that you will only let it relist once, or you won't relist at all, or you will only post within your country because that's just so much easier, or you just are not willing to negotiate whatsoever. If you put something up on Facebook Marketplace for £25 and someone offers you 15, it's just a no. If you have that parameter in place, it's easier to work that out than if you judge every individual lowball offer on its merits, which just becomes exhausting. So I'm not here to say I have had a Damascene conversion and now advocate selling all your stuff, because I haven't and I don't. I also know that I will do this for a while in an enthusiastic way, and then I will be hit with hating it and I will not do it again for 5 years. And so knowing that about myself, I'm just kind of rolling with it, knowing that at some point I will be wrapping a parcel, trying to find the sticky tape, and just go, I can't do this anymore, and I will stop. I also have learned some things about myself, which is good. I've learned some things about my stuff, which is good. And I am still donating far, far, far more than I am selling. I don't want you thinking that I have stopped donating things. I have stopped getting things out of the house in other ways. No, the vast majority of what's leaving my house is either going in the bin or to the charity shop. It's the odd thing I'm selling, and I'm quite enjoying it. The minute I stop enjoying it, it stops. The minute I suspect I'm using it as a delaying tactic rather than as a positive thing, I have to stop. And you need to be really clear with yourself as well if you decide to sell your stuff, any of it, because it is totally fine to not sell your stuff. It makes more sense in many ways for hoarders to not sell their stuff. But if you've been considering it, I hope that those guidelines help a bit with assessing whether it's worth it, assessing whether you're kind of cheating yourself and tricking yourself into keeping things for a bit longer, and also to be aware of what's great about it, but also what can lead to many problems. Let's talk secrets. I keep my hoarding secret, and I often wonder about the effect that these secrets and this shame have on us and on mental health. To start breaking the taboo, I want to hear your hoarding secrets to discuss anonymously on the podcast. I've created a form to submit your secrets anonymously. I won't know who sends what. If you want to tell me your secret for a potential future episode, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/secret. So shout out this week to Overcoming Distractions, the podcast. They had a guest on called Star Hansen, who is a professional organizer. And she was talking about how normal it is that when you create systems for managing your home better, that they don't work perfectly first time. And she's talking about how that's normal, it's to be expected, and it's not a reason to be put off. Have a listen.
Even I, as a professional organizer, if I come into your house and I set up a system for you, with 1000% certainty, I do not expect that system to work on the first try.
Yeah.
I assume it's going to take 2, 3, 5, 10 times. I don't care. I care that every time it gets better. And eventually it's going to work, and eventually it'll go to the white space, and it will just be integrated with who you are.
And I think that's important and something that I always reinforce.
So I will link to Overcoming Distractions, the podcast, in the show notes at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. It's worth listening to if you find yourself very distractible. Okay, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder podcast. You can find more online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. You can find me on Twitter at @thathoarder and on Facebook at Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder. To find out more about how you can support the podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss any future episodes. There may be links in this podcast that earn me money. This doesn't come at any extra cost to you if you ever make a purchase through the links, and it helps to support the future of the podcast.
Now on Broadway, An Enemy of the People is a New York Times Critics' Pick. Jeremy Strong is one of the great actors of his generation, hails the Chicago Tribune. In a performance the Wall Street Journal praises as powerfully affecting and bitterly funny. Michael Imperioli sets off sparks, cheers The Hollywood Reporter. Victoria Pedretti is luminous, raves variety. From director Sam Gold and playwright Amy Herzog, An Enemy of the People is urgent, electrifying, and haunting, declares USA Today. An Enemy of the People, on Broadway through June 16th only.
If there's one thing that my family and friends know me for, it's being an amazing gift giver. I owe it all to Celebrations Passport from 1-800-Flowers.com, my one-stop shopping site that has amazing gifts for every occasion. With Celebrations Passport, I get free shipping on thousands of amazing gifts. And the more gifts I give, the more perks and rewards I earn. To learn more and take your gift giving to the next level, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
When you make decisions for your company, you look for the no-brainers. If you have a lot of mailing to do, Stamps.com is the ultimate no-brainer. Use the Stamps.com mobile app to mail everything you need to keep your business running with up to 89% off USPS and UPS. Make the same no-brainer decision as over 1 million other businesses with Stamps.com. Use code PROGRAM for a special offer. That's Stamps.com, code PROGRAM.